Good evening. Happy Tuesday, July 23rd. It's 11:23 p.m. Candy the Wonder Pup has shown up, and I didn't get a treat ready for her. And no one's watching right now. So I just got to walk a couple steps, and I'll go get her a treat. Because if I don't, there we go. I got her treat. I'm back live. Oh, the joys of doing videos live and unscripted. I put so much thought and preparation into this. Cryptomeria, she knows when you start streaming. As soon as I say the word, she's very word. If we say the word in this house, SOCCR, SOCCER, soccer, she knows that we're going in the van and we're going to a soccer game. She knows, the W word. Anyone with a dog knows the W word, and I can't even say more than that. All right, sit down. Shake a paw. Lay down. Speak. Don't chuff. Give me a good one. Close enough. I won't torture you. You want it? There you go. She loves these bacon treats that I've just started to get her. Purina. Anyway. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for watching. It's going to be a rambly one tonight. I'm telling you, this world has gone crazy. I didn't know what to title this. And so a thought that I have had for, it's going on 30 odd years. In pharmakeia, we trust. Although I wouldn't have framed it that way 30 years ago, I came to the realization 30 years ago that the degree to which humanity in the Western world, certainly in Canada, relies on pharmakeia is unbelievable. And I didn't even know what the word pharmakeia meant 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I learned this within the last 10 years or so. And so I'm going to hit you with a scripture reading. And it's from the book of Revelation. With these times that we're living in, I bet you there are lots of people out there pouring through the book of Revelation, lots of people watching videos online, trying to get a sense, because it is a very difficult through John's Revelation. And there I've mentioned before that you can find videos and someone will have a whiteboard type screen, a whiteboard, and they'll have a chronology and they'll have a line, and somewhere on the line they'll write, "We are here," and they'll say how major events line up with what was prophesied in the book of Revelation, and they'll tell you what's to come. I don't do that. The book is very unwieldy, and there are a lot of different interpretations about what things mean. I attended a church for a while during the lockdown period from 2020 in 2021, 2022, when we were being locked down and churches were being closed and restricted and everything. There was a church out in Aylmer, Ontario, that actually they have, it's called the Church of God Restoration. They're based in, I think the name of the city is Greenville, Ohio. It's definitely Ohio. And they also have congregations in Indiana and Oklahoma, in a number of U.S. states. They have congregations in Canada and Lethbridge, Alberta, in Steinbach, Manitoba, I think in Leamington, Ontario, and Aylmer. It's not a huge denomination. It sprang out of Mennonites. Most of what I'll call legacy members gravitated out of the Mennonite religion. And they actually have, as a backdrop in many of their churches, a prophetic timeline telling you everything that's happened in the world. But it's a pictorial display. Anyway, let me get to the scripture reading. For those who may not have heard this, pharmakeia, this word, it's a Greek word, ancient Greek or Koine Greek or whatever. And if you read this chapter of Revelation, to give it some context. This is where John, the Apostle John, saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was made bright with his splendor. And he called out with a mighty voice, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. It has become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt of every foul spirit." And it's talking about this is the hour. Babylon has fallen, and the angel is calling for the saints, for the people of God to come out of Babylon. And there are different ways to look at that. And later on in verse 23, what I just read was the start, chapter 18, verse 1. This is verse 23. "And the light of a lamp shall shine in thee no more in Babylon. And the light of a lamp shall shine in thee no more, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall be heard in thee no more." The bride is the church. The bridegroom is Christ. So the voice of Christ and the voice of the church shall be heard in thee no more. "For thy merchants were great men of the earth, and all nations were deceived by thy sorcery." And that word sorcery is the English rendering of the Greek word pharmakeia. That's the word that John wrote when he wrote this prophetic vision. He wrote, "And all nations were deceived by thy pharmakeia." I've mentioned before on this channel that there is a tool, for lack of a better word, and it's called Strong's Concordance. And what Strong's allows you to do is it allows you to look up the original word that would have been written in Hebrew or in Greek, in Hebrew, or in Aramaic. The Old Testament is almost entirely written in Hebrew, with some sections of Daniel being in Aramaic. And then the entire New Testament is written in Greek. And so I have it up on the screen now. "For all thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries." And what you do here is you go over sorceries, and it brings up 5331. That's the Strong's Concordance number, and it tells you the original word and how to pronounce it, pharmakeia. And then it gives a definition: the use of medicine, drugs, or spells. Medicines were around 2,000 years ago. I've spoken on this channel before about apothecaries and how different herbs, plants, things of that nature were known. There were books written on if someone has a toothache, menstrual cramps, headaches, you name it. There were natural remedies that were written of on how to treat conditions, on how to treat illness, on how to treat disease. So Strong's Concordance will give you this. And if it will allow me to scroll down. So pharmakeia, medicine, drugs, or spells. Original word, and it gives you the original spelling in the original Greek. It's a noun, it's feminine. Transliteration is pharmakeia, and it's from whence we get the word pharmacy and pharmaceuticals. In this sense, it is saying that it's being used to denote magic, sorcery, and so I'm going to end my share there. There's a tendency when I learn something, I tend to think, well, I must be late to the game. Everyone must know this. But a lot of people probably don't know it, that pharmakeia, this word that is the base form or the root of pharmacy, pharmaceuticals, is also the root word for sorcery. And the epiphany I had 20, 30 years ago was that sorcery, I'm trying to think exactly how to frame this. In life, for all of human history, we have always had struggles. We've always had illness. We've always had disease. We've always had anxiety. We've always had these things. These things have always existed. And in years gone by, you might go to an apothecarist. You might go to someone if you had a toothache or a headache or cramps or having trouble sleeping, all manner of things. You might go to an apothecarist, but often too, you would go to a person of faith. You would go to your pastor, to your faith leader, and for wisdom, for guidance. Nowadays, in pharmakeia, we trust. That's on U.S. money, on U.S. currency. They have that's a motto written on all U.S. paper and even I think coinage. It says on them. It says on all currency in the U.S. "In God we trust." But it doesn't seem to me anymore that we trust in God. Now we trust in pharmakeia. And what happens? People, I'm having trouble sleeping. Take a pill. I'm too heavy. I need to lose weight. Take a pill. I'm anxious. Take a pill. I'm this, I'm that. Take a pill. Take a pill. My wife is complaining that I have Jimmy legs, that my legs shake when I'm sleeping. Oh, we have a syndrome. We've named a syndrome after that. You have RLS, restless leg syndrome, Jimmy legs. We have a drug for that. I can't perform sexually anymore. We have a drug for that. We have a drug for anything. There is no, and what the human population, we have been conditioned to believe that we are to have no pain, no misery, no struggle. We're supposed to be living in bliss. And that's what we've been conditioned to believe. But of course, life isn't like that. Life is full of pain. Life is full of misery. Life is full of anxiety. And this is part of the struggle that is part and parcel of the human condition. I was speaking of it in my last video. If the mountain was smooth, you couldn't climb it. We're climbing towards something, but it's a difficult climb. And I mentioned before as well, Israel, the name Israel was the name given to Jacob after he had wrestled with an angel of the Lord all night and refused to submit until he was given a blessing, and his name was changed from Jacob to Israel. And Israel, by definition, means one who struggles with God. This life is supposed to be a struggle, but instead of struggling, we have pharmakeia saying, no need to struggle. No need to feel any pain, disease, anxiety. Life should be bliss. And I would submit that is the message of the enemy. The enemy wants us to believe that we are, do whatever is right in your own eyes and all is good. And it really hit home for me during the COVID nonsense when the vaccines started to be mandated. In my province, it was in September of 2021. I think the date was September 22nd, was the day they imposed the vaccine passport system in my province of Ontario. And I knew lots of people who didn't want to get the vaccine. Most of them bowed down, though. Most of them rolled up their sleeve to keep their job, to go on a trip, to take their kid to hockey, to basically be a fully participating member of society. They gave in, even though they didn't want to. They didn't like being forced to take it, but they saw no other option. Well, I have to work. I have to do this. I have to do that. So I have to get the shot. But at the same time, these are people who I see so often are often taking handfuls, literally handfuls of medication every day for all manner of things. And it makes me wonder, how did humanity ever reach the heights we did? Even before, even before this modern age, you think about the advancements that had happened, and and then sometime around the 1920s or so, that's when the medical profession became almost weaponized. When apothecaries were basically deemed to be illegal. You had to go to medical school, and you weren't allowed to take the natural remedies anymore. You had to take the chemicalized derivatives of those remedies. No, you can't take that natural medication. We've replicated it in chemical form, and you can take that form because we can profit off that. And the number of people taking literally handfuls of medication is just, it blows my mind. And so often you see it in every advertisement for when they advertise for a drug, they'll say for a pharmakeia product, they will say side effects include liver, kidney, and they'll give you, rhyme it off. It takes half an ad for them to list the potential side effects. Consult with a doctor if this medication is right for you. And so often the drugs, especially what I will call, I don't know if I'm using the word right, psychotropic, psychiatric drugs for anxiety and things of that nature. So often these drugs have incredible side effects that have physiological impacts, weight gain, and then weight gain leads to diabetes, and then diabetes leads to the need to take insulin and metformin and other drugs. And it's just, well, we'll give you this drug. Well, that drug has a side effect. Well, don't worry about the side effect. We have a drug for that. Well, that subsequent drug has a side effect. Well, don't worry. We have another drug for that. And it's a never-ending cycle. And that's why I see regularly. I remember having a coffee with a lady who was struggling, and both she and her kids were taking handfuls of medication. And how it saddens me. It just saddens me, the degree to which we've been conditioned to think that life is supposed to be, unicorns and rainbows and lollipops and sunshine all the time. And that there's not supposed to be any hardship, not supposed to be any anxiety. So that was kind of the title of this, because look at the world we're living in now. And I wonder if there's a correlation between those who blindly lap up whatever the mainstream media is selling to them. Just tell me what to think, tell me what to believe, and the degree to which they use pharmaceutical products. Full disclosure, I myself am on zero prescription medication. The only things I do take, and I mean to take it more often, turmeric or turmeric. I'm not even sure how to say it. I think it's turmeric or turmeric. I'm not sure. Actually, I have it. It says right on it, anti-inflammation. I'm not plugging any product. I don't get no skin in the game. And I mean to take one or two of these a day, but I so often forget to take them because I'm feeling generally healthy. What tends to happen is I remember after my knees and hips and my ankles and my joints start aching, then I go, oh yeah, haven't taken my turmeric for a while. But it says right on it, anti-inflammation. It says used in herbal medicine to help relieve joint pain and inflammatory conditions, 122 vegetarian capsules. And I'm hearing rumblings that the government is talking about, in Canada at least, and maybe in the United States as well, is talking about placing restrictions on this type of stuff. But it says 3,050 milligrams of raw herb and it has a secondary name, curcumin. From what I understand, it's a spice used in Indian cooking. But let me get the top. I always forget to put this on live chat. They give you a choice: top chat, where it gives you the top messages, and live chat, where it gives you all the messages. I'm one who likes to see everything. Surprise, surprise. But when I look at the reporting about what happened on July 13th, with Donald Trump being the assassination attempt, what I'm seeing in the reporting is that I always say on this channel that the media is there to tell you what to believe, what to think, and even how to feel. And what I see them saying with respect to the assassination attempt is this Thomas Matthew Crooks is being presented as the sole shooter, a lone guy acting alone. And that's already, that's being presented as fact right now. That it was his bullet that went through Donald Trump's ear, I guess, right ear, upper part of the right ear. That it's being presented that he's the only one, and it was his bullet, and he's the assassin, or he was the one who attempted to assassinate, and the investigation hasn't even been completed yet, and they've already reached a conclusion, and they're already telling us exactly what to think and what to believe and how to feel about it. It was a horrible lapse. It was a lot of mistakes were made. It was a failure. And I think the only thing that failed on that day, genuinely, I think the only thing that failed was that the bullet did not do what it was intended to do wherever it came from. And I have serious doubts as to whether the bullet that took out part of Donald Trump's ear, I have serious doubts as to whether that bullet came from the gun that was being held by Thomas Matthew Crooks. I think he was involved. I think he's the fall guy. He's the patsy. He's the one who was designated to be blamed. But at the end of the day, I think Donald Trump was supposed to be dead. I'm just going to speak plainly. Donald Trump, there was a plan. And like many people, I do not ascribe to the lone gunman theory about John F. Kennedy's assassination in November of '63. That was, he was taken out. And I don't think it's unfair. It was a coup d'etat. They overthrew the government. John F. Kennedy was not playing ball. John F. Kennedy was not wanted to dismantle or bring greater scrutiny to bear on secretive U.S. agencies, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA. He wanted to bring greater scrutiny. He refused to invade Cuba and give the CIA and organized crime its playground back. His brother, Bobby Kennedy, was going after organized crime in a big way. I think John F. Kennedy absolutely was taken out. That's a commonly held belief. And I think that same apparatus that took John F. Kennedy out in November of 1963, I think that same apparatus exists, and it tried and failed to take Donald Trump out a week and a bit ago. They want him gone. And I'm almost becoming a Trumper. And I don't like to fall in for cult of personalities. I think Trump is an incredibly flawed human being. But at the end of the day, I also don't think he can be controlled. I don't think he's part of the machinery. I think they try to manipulate him, and they have some success, but he's a loose cannon. He'll cut the strings every now and again. I think on the COVID era, did he come up with the idea of warp speed? Was he directing the development of this COVID vaccine that they brought out at warp speed? Of course not. He has no medical background. He has no science background. He listened to the people around him. They probably stroked his ego, told him, "Oh, you're going to save millions of lives. Just remove the regulatory barriers that make this a 10 plus year procedure. Let's move at warp speed and get rid of those checks that are there to ensure that drugs are properly scrutinized, that they go through separate trials, that we establish at least a 2-year safety profile on a drug minimum." No, Miss Fred, we can't do that. We can't afford to do that now. Look at the news. And so under his watch, the vaccine did come out, but he never mandated it. He never forced it into people's arms. That didn't come until September of 2021, when Joe Biden issued the orders making it mandatory for federal employees to roll up their sleeves, and brought pressure to bear on industry groups like the airlines and such to force their employees, and gave employees no recourse if they were getting fired for trying to maintain their bodily autonomy. And the world is getting scary. The world is getting freaky. And getting back to the Bible in this verse 23 of chapter 18 in the book of Revelation. "And the light of a lamp shall shine in thee no more." It's getting dark. This world, but we are living in Babylon. If you're living in the Western world, United States, Canada, Western Europe, anywhere in the Western developed world, we are living in Babylon. We're living in Pax Americana. "And the light of a lamp shall shine in thee no more." It will shine in Babylon, where we're all living. "And the voice of Christ and the church shall be heard in thee no more." I'm editing. The words in the Bible are, "and the voice of the bridegroom." The bridegroom is Christ. "And the bride shall be heard in thee no more." And look at how they're trying to silence Christian voices in the world. And there are probably some right now who have been listening to me up until now who just jumped in and went, "Oh God, he's one of these religious guys. I'm done." Because we've been programmed to believe that. Everyone has been programmed to believe that any individual, anyone who professes faith, is ignorant, that they deny science, that they, and that they're not worthy to listen to. And so the voice of the church and the voice of Christ shall be heard in thee no more. "For thy merchants were the great men of the earth." Look at what we've achieved in this Western world. We venerate people like Jeff Bezos, like Elon Musk, like Donald Trump, like countless others. The Walton family in Canada, the Weston family, the Bill Gates. These uber wealthy people are venerated and held up and idealized for their wealth. "For thy merchants were the great men of the earth." We call them the elites. They go to Davos every February, Davos, Switzerland, and they gather with their brethren, with their corporate brethren, and with their friends in academia and their government puppets, and they decide how they're going to manipulate things and how they're going to direct the affairs of this world. "And all the nations were deceived by thy sorcery, by thy pharmakeia. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and of the saints and of all who have been slain on the earth." And somewhere in here, it says, somewhere in this chapter, it calls, it says, "Come out of her," calling to God's people, saying, "Come out of Babylon." I look upon that as metaphorical. Recognize that the system under which you're living, recognize it and come out of it. No longer bow down to it. No longer are we to, look to the television set and the mainstream media and the NBCs, ABC, CBS's, Fox, CNN, CBC, Global, CTV. No longer are we to look to them for our marching orders. Get into this book, which okay, yeah, it starts in verse 4. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues, for her sins are heaped as high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities." He's talking about Babylon. "Render to her as she herself has rendered, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix up a double draught for her in the cup she has mixed. For she glorified herself and played the wanton. She played the harlot. So give her a like measure of torment and mourning." We are coming into some dark times. You know, I've mentioned it many times on this channel. We can see the storms. We can see the storm clouds. Jesus often said, he talked about that famous saying, "Red sky at night, sailor's delight. Red sky in the morning, sailor take warning." Jesus in the Gospels says to his disciples that that when the sky is red at night, that it means good weather coming, and that if you see a red sky in the morning, it means bad weather is coming. You can read the sign of the times, but how come you cannot read the signs of the times spiritually? How come you cannot recognize the signs of the time that you are living in now? You can see it in the weather. Well, you need to see it in other ways too. I'm paraphrasing that expression, "red sky at night, sailor's delight." That knowledge that a red sky at night portends more often than not overwhelmingly good weather, and that a red sky in the morning portends bad weather. That was known in Jesus's time. I'm sure they had a different saying other than "red sky at night, sailor's delight." They'd find something that rhymed in Aramaic or Hebrew. But there are storm clouds all around us. We have the climate change nonsense that they're spewing on us constantly. We just had that cyber attack this past Friday, and our entire world, I'm talking to you right now over a digital platform. If all of a sudden the internet goes down, what happens to our world? All logistics, all deliveries are managed electronically. Our store shelves are full based on manifests and everything that are, everything's done digitally now. Everyone gets paid digitally. We don't get paper checks anymore. We don't get cash. Money is just transferred in electronically. If the infrastructure that facilitates all the way, this is the backbone of our society now, used to run on paper, now it runs digitally. And if that backbone infrastructure that basically is the central nervous system of our world, if something attacks it and it goes down, if people stop getting paid, if fuel stops being delivered, if grocery store shelves are not being stocked up, what happens? A cyber attack, that's the scariest thing. And that's something that Klaus Schwab, former head of the World Economic Forum, since resigned, he's got to be 90 or pushing 90. I think he was born in 1938, do the math. I guess he'd be 84, 85, somewhere 86 maybe. He warned in Bali, Indonesia in November, I think of 2022. It was he was addressing a conference in Bali, Indonesia, at a parallel conference of the G20 summit that was taking place. The G20 is the world's 20 largest Western economies. It would exclude China. I'm not sure if Russia's involved with them or not. But anyway, the G20, basically the world's 20 largest economies, governments send their finance ministers, sometimes their presidents and prime ministers, and they have a conference. And there was a parallel summit going on of corporate leaders. And Klaus Schwab addressed the Parallel Summit. And during his address, he spoke specifically of, he spoke generally of more black swan events that the world should expect as we during this transitionary period as we move into this great reset. And one of the specific threats he mentioned was a cyber attack. Now, I would have to think that there's redundancy built in, but you and I may not know about it, that there are hardwired networks to keep the so-called elites looked after, while the systems that you and I and the rest of the great unwashed use would go down. So he mentioned cyber attack. That Colorado has just announced another human case of bird flu, another positive test at another farm, not the one they just culled over 1 million, I think it was 1 point something million chickens were culled at a farm in Colorado that resulted in 6 individuals testing positive for bird flu because apparently feathers and everything are flying around. They had huge industrial fans blowing in an indoor, I guess I'll call it a chicken coop, a massive indoor chicken coop, a factory farm. These are probably egg laying, is where they get eggs from. And they culled over 1 million chickens. And while culling them, euthanizing them, killing them, they had massive fans blowing because it was 104 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Goodness knows how hot it would be inside that massive chicken coop factory farm. And there's dust and feathers and everything flowing around. And while individuals, the workers, were wearing personal protective equipment, sealed off eyes and sealing off their face, like with a gas mask type thing. However, in that type of heat, all you have to do is break the seal. And once the seal is broken, you're talking about microscopic particles, microbes, things that are less than a micron in size, easy for a person to get infected. And so they're saying that 6 people in that incident during that time were infected. Now they're saying they found an additional worker at an additional location, human, who has been infected with bird flu. And I think we're up to 11 or 12 total now in the United States who have had identified infections. And doing some reading on it, there are calls for much more widespread testing. They're saying that while it's 11 being reported, it is most certainly significantly higher than that because testing is incredibly restricted. So crazy, crazy, crazy. And then we have political crisis. There's talk that Biden may be pushed out. Biden never issued a personal statement. He's never gone in front of the cameras. No one's heard him utter the words, I'm dropping out of the race. All we have is a white piece of paper that says Joe Biden on the top and what purports to be his signature at the bottom, with him stepping down from the race, that he's telling the world he's not seeking re-election. But he hasn't uttered the words himself. Apparently that's supposed to be happening within the next couple days. They've reported that he's now COVID clear, Mr. 6 supposed vaccinations, and he's gotten his 3rd case of COVID, whatever. But it'll be interesting. Joe, I am just in my own mind, imagine him going, I'm not dropping out of the race. So I never dropped out. Yes, you did, Joe. Look, it's on the television. And I genuinely think I believe he was forced out. He was told, you're leaving. There, we're putting out, you're gone. And now I think further there could be a push to have him not just drop out of the race, but resign the presidency in total. Resign so that his vice president, Kamala Harris, that she is given the oath of office, and then she becomes Madam President. and gets the full power of incumbency for her run for the 2024 presidency to become president in February of 2025. Although if she were to, she would be the 47th president of the United States. And I would bet money on it right now. I won't, but I would. I mean, if I was a betting man, I'd put a few $100 down saying that Kamala Harris is going to, sometime between now and the election, that she will be operating as commander in chief, that she will be the president of the United States, and that Donald Trump will have to defeat not the incumbent Joe Biden, but the incumbent Kamala Harris. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that. I have a number of people watching. The live chat is on. So far, only Cryptomeria has chimed in. So, there's that political crisis. Goodness knows what could happen in other parts of the world. What could happen in Canada? What could happen in Europe? There's storms brewing everywhere. The same guy, his name is Brandon, which is an ironic name. Let's go, Brandon. Brandon is the name of the guy who professes to be a prophet, who 3 or 4 months before the fact prophesied that Donald Trump would be shot in the air, and that there would be an assassination attempt on him, and he would fall to the ground. And he eerily prophetic, eerily accurate what he prophesied. Well, now he is saying he has recently issued a new prophecy saying that God showed him, or the Spirit showed him, Paris burning. You can look it up yourself. Paris in flames. Myself personally, do I follow this guy, and do I believe he's a prophet? I won't say no, I do not. I haven't completely discounted the possibility, but I'm far from being all in. I'm very circumspect about things of that nature. So we could have more political crises happening around the world. Terrorism should never be discounted. Anyone 40 or older, 50 certainly my age or older, but 40 or older remembers well what happened on 9/11. Could something similar to that happen? To me, that's the mother of all conspiracies. What happened that day? I mean, the fact that 9/11 was a conspiracy is beyond doubt. It's just a question of who was behind it. The official story is that it was Osama bin Laden hiding out in a cave in Afghanistan with flip phone type cell phone, very basic pre-smartphone capabilities, that he was able to circumvent all the world's security and intelligence apparatuses globally, and was able to, hijack a number of planes that day and crash them into the Pentagon, into the North and South Twin Towers, and one ended up disintegrating into just a big black hole in Pennsylvania. That's the most amazing thing about that day. One of them, there are too many, but one of the most amazing things about that day is you never saw the wreckage of any planes. You didn't see the wreckage of any planes at the Twin Towers or at the Pentagon or in that hole in Pennsylvania where that plane just basically disintegrated. They had FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, workers on the scene that day in Philadelphia in this big black charred hole. And a reporter asked one of the FEMA workers, "What are you finding?" And the FEMA worker said, "We're not finding anything here bigger than a phone book." The plane normally plane crashes happen. We've all seen footage of a plane crash, and you see the wing, the tail, The nose, you see parts of the plane everywhere, the wreckage, and you can identify, oh, that's the wing, that's the tail, that's the nose. There's the landing gear. Where's the wreckage from the Twin Towers, from the Pentagon, from Pennsylvania? It all disintegrated. Really crazy what happened that day. But there were no explosives involved, they say. There were no explosives on the planes, but they all just disintegrated into nothing. And yet a copy of the Quran and the passports for the people who were blamed for it, those somehow miraculously survived 9/11. But could something like that happen again? Because what happens is when you throw everything at everyone, you have all these things: climate, cyber attack, health scare, political crisis, terrorism. Oh my gosh, there's another war, and all this is coming at you. Oh man, I need some drugs. I need some pharmakeia. I'm getting anxious. I'm not supposed to be anxious. My master tells me better take a gram than to give a damn. It's a line from the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Better a gram than a damn. Everyone took the drug called Soma, S-O-M-A. So this world, but this world isn't the end. This isn't home. And if you want to learn about home, pick up this book. Get into a relationship with Christ. Not with a preacher, not with someone on the internet, not with your pastor. Individuals can lead you into relationship with Christ, but ultimately the relationship that matters is the relationship you develop and you build with Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And it's a relationship that evolves, it grows over time. Do not, it's a slow awakening. It's a walk. It's a journey. It's the way. When you read Acts of the Apostles, the early church, they would say, followers of the way. We're on our way. We're on a path. We're on a pilgrimage. We're on a march. And what matters, the walk is as important as the destination. So anyway, I'll wrap it up there. I'll welcome anyone. Sorry, it was a little rambly. I tried to tie it up at the end and bring it back to the subject line. In pharmakeia we trust. Well, in point of fact, what it says on U.S. currency is the way it should be. In God we trust. Trust in God. Do not trust in pharmakeia. Do not trust in sorcery. Do not trust magicians who say they will solve all your problems, because they will not. And having some anxiety, having some depression, these things can be overcome because Jesus overcame, we can overcome. We can become overcomers of this world, this beastly world that we're all living in, and that is being torn down before our very eyes. Ultimately, we win in the end. That's the message. That's the gospel. That's the good news. So in pharmakeia we trust? No. In God we trust. I'll end it there. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. May the Lord grant you peace. And if you liked it, thank you for the thumbs up I have already. You're welcome to if you think I have something worthwhile to say and you want to support me, subscriptions help. It helps build my profile. I think I have something reasonably decent to inject into the public discourse, but ultimately, it's a choice of viewers, whether I do or not. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, you're most welcome. That march to 1,000 continues. We'll see if I get there, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Good night. Oh, last thing. comment down below. I love comments, and I'll try. If you're a new commenter, I will. If you're new and putting down a comment, I will try. I will do my best to respond. God bless. Have a great night.